Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special edition of the Overseas Famous Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Owens. We are joined by an incredible group of people today. We have former NFL player Connor Barwin, and we have Fitzann Reid. Both are from CSG Venture Group, and they are the proud owners or majority owners of an Italian basketball team. And I think that's just fantastic. And we're going to get into that today. So both welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Kevin.
Of course. Now, kind of going into the biggest thing, which is the acquisition of your club. Can you tell us how this opportunity even came? Well, first, hold on, because I want to get into a Penn thing real quick. Because my brother went to Penn, played basketball at Penn, and he was super salty about the Princeton thing. Like, he was so mad that Princeton was doing so well. And I was like, in my mind, I'm always thinking, well, yes, you're a rival, but shouldn't you be proud of your conference? Like, I always looked at it if my conference did some damage in the NCAA tournament, I was always like, okay, this is good. I played against these guys all year. My brother was not having it. He was so mad that Princeton kept winning. Are you guys on that level of the Princeton-Penn rivalry, or are you guys just like, nah, it's cool?
I'll say happy for Princeton. It's great for the tournament. I would love for Penn to do great. That would be good. I went to undergrad at University of Cincinnati, so I really root for the Bearcats. Didn't make the tournament this year. But I will say, to your brother's point, this doesn't happen for me in college sports, but at least in the NFL, I still work for the Eagles, and say the Cowboys or the Giants make the playoffs, I am definitely not rooting for them to win the Super Bowl. I can assure you that.
I think when it gets to professional sports, I think you're right on point. I think that's something that I would 100% agree. You can't root for the Eagles or for the Cowboys or the Giants if you're playing for the Eagles and currently working there. Yeah, you just kind of hope that they flop, because that would be the worst. As a fan, I think that too. I'm a huge Phillies fan, so like the Mets, etc. Now, Fitz, you are from New York, so I don't want to start getting too much bashing on New York. You'll just start getting pissed off.
I'm a Giants fan. I'm a Knicks fan. I did root for the Eagles in the Super Bowl only because of Connor. Only because of loyalty to Connor. That's it. That's it.
So let's go into the obvious huge acquisition. You guys took over the Italian team, and when you looked at that, how did this opportunity even come up to acquire a team like that?
It started at Wharton. I mean, a group of us from Wharton sitting around the table, some former athletes, and we thinking, hey, we will always want to be involved in sports. We don't play anymore, but we want to be involved. I'm a lawyer by trade, but grew up playing soccer. I used to coach soccer at a high level. And so, I just have this affinity for sports. And so for us, we thought, look, we'll own a sports team when we're older, got a little bit more capital. But it happened faster than we thought. I mean, actually, one of our professors came through and said, look, there are teams abroad. You don't have to just look at teams in the United States. There are teams abroad that are for sale all the time. In fact, there's one right now in Italy, a basketball team. What do you think? And, it took us about a year of due diligence and checking things out and taking trips to Italy and meeting the team and the owners before we could make it happen. But we were able to do it way faster than we ever thought we could.
What made you guys choose Trieste? Like, when you look at this particular team and you're looking around, what was it about this specific team that stood out to you guys as a place where you could make some money and, create some impact in the Italian basketball world?
I would say the first thing that jumped out to me, and Connor, you could jump in, is just that Jordan played there once, right? Like, you Google it, and the first thing that comes up is Jordan smashing the backboard. And I was like, all right, so there's a history here. There's something here. Like, that's pretty cool, right? So that opens the door to the conversation. And then also just where it's located. You got so many players coming in NBA out of Central Europe and Eastern Europe. And Trieste is kind of 2 hours, it's 2 hours east of Venice, but right on the border of Croatia. And so you got this strong basketball culture that's building and happening. And so we want to be on the very cusp of that, right? Like, all this excitement's happening in that area. We wanted to be a part of that. So that initially attracted us to that area.
Yeah, I would just say, Kevin, for me, everything that Fitz said, but the city is really unique and the city is important. I think we, in the due diligence and my diligence, talking around people in the NBA, people know about this team in Trieste. It's sort of an historic franchise. I mean, there is a identity of the city with the team, and in American sports, that's what is so important. And then where it's located, I mean, right next to Slovenia and Croatia, there's a hotbed of basketball. And again, basketball is sort of the most important thing in that town, which really was the most important thing to me. Like, if you're going to be able to sort of modernize a club, it's really hard to, sort of create new fans, but they have this built-in history of fans, and hopefully we can go sort of serve those fans better than they have before. And the last thing, I think sort of Italy in itself is attractive. I think the LBA is an attractive league. You have to deal with relegation and promotion, which is crazy, especially from an ownership side. But from a fan side, from a entertainment side, it is fascinating. I mean, we've sort of been in control of the team for 3-4 months now, and we thought we were going to be in the playoffs. Now we're sort of at the bottom of the league. It is just week to week there are these sort of crazy things that are happening, and we want to find ways to show more people about how entertaining sort of European basketball is, and especially Italian basketball.
It's funny you brought up the fans, because the fans play such a big part of that whole entire experience. I know, playing collegiately, you had a ton of fans at your games. Same with Cincinnati. Like, at major college, you always have a ton of fans. And then I was playing in the G League, and there was 20 people there. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what am I doing here? And then I went overseas, and every single game that I was playing in Europe and Australia was packed to the gills, and the fans were crazy. They're yelling. Sometimes they're throwing stuff on the court. It was such an experience and such an incredible atmosphere, but that's why you want to play. That's what the games that you look at the Serbian games, Partizan, it's an atmosphere. It's a crazy thing. So when you guys look at that, is that your fan base that you talked about, that rabid fan base that they just want to be there every single time? And you talked about how important that was. Do you have those interactions with the fans where they almost show you their passion on a daily basis? I mean, Connor, you play for the Eagles, for Christ's sake. I'm an Eagles fan. I know what passion means because I grew up in it. So, yeah.
Well, we've all been over there and sort of felt it and seen it. They have a huge supporter group that's there. Fitz, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have the 4th biggest arena in the LBA. It's almost 7,000 people, and it's filled up with people. It's freaking awesome. Like, if you're going to go play in the G League, or you're going to go play for this team, I mean, this is a fun environment to go watch a basketball game, to go play a basketball game. And I'll just tell you personally, there's certain things, and we might get into it, about European basketball or this club, where we sort of, from an investment, we saw an opportunity for value, right? Where you can sort of modernize certain things. But to be honest with you, there's great learnings that I want to take from what they do at this club, and what they've done to build up this fan base. There's certain things with the songs and the chants and everything that happen at a Trieste basketball game that I would love to find a way to learn from and bring back to the States. The Eagles have a ton of stuff, but we're always looking for ways to sort of innovate and steal kind of good practices. And I think there's a lot to learn from, what they're doing over in Trieste specifically and across sort of European basketball.
I mean, could you imagine going to a basketball game, NBA game, and seeing fans shirts off, drums out, yelling and screaming, and even during the halftime, they singing, they're clapping. It's not something you think about when you think about basketball. You usually associate that with soccer, right, in Europe, but that culture is very strong in basketball, and the fans are love this team through and through, and they're there to support the team through and through, and that passion shows at every home game, right? And to the point where sometimes it gets testy when you go to your rivals, and then you gotta get police making sure that certain fan groups are not with each other, sitting next to each other. Those are the things that we have to think about now, It's not something that happens in basketball in the US.
No, you hit it on the head. I mean, the fan base is so important. I remember I was in a game and I've never experienced this before, and I couldn't hear. Like, I was so loud that my ears were ringing and I couldn't even like process the noise that was coming in. I think I turned the ball over and then my coach was yelling. It was just all I heard was I saw was his mouth moving. I was like, I have no idea what's happening right now. I need a timeout or something. I'm like, I'm actually overwhelmed. But that's the fans. And I think when you talk about bringing that home, I think when you talk about like the NFL does a game a week. And when you're overseas, it's like a game a week. And I think that creates such a buzz. Soccer, a game a week. When you're playing in the NBA and there's 82 games and you're sometimes playing 3 games a week, it's like hard to get the fan base to get up for each one. But when you have that one a week, that's their life. I mean, the Eagles, it's like the tailgates, the boom. And when you're overseas, like that's the same thing. That basketball game is your life. That's your routine. That's what you're going to do on those weekends. And it's just fascinating, the difference between overseas sports and, domestic sports. It's crazy.
But like Connor said, though, it makes the games count more. Less
Yes.
games mean every game matters. Every single match matters. You can't go through a losing streak because that really has an impact on how the team is doing, similar to NFL.
Yeah, you nailed it. In NFL, we say like every sort of, series matters, every play matters. For the last 4 months, I've suddenly quickly realized every possession matters over there. To your point, it's 40-minute games. I mean, it's all on the line. Once a week, a 40-minute basketball game. I mean, you players are going to empty the tank. So I think that's just for us. That's so entertaining. And we want more. Like, for you, like you played overseas, and I played college basketball. Wasn't very good, but I had a ton of teammates that played overseas, and it's getting better. But it's kind of like they go overseas and then they're just see you later. Nobody know what happened. And it's so awesome what they're doing over there. And it's high level basketball. And I think for us at CSG and at Trieste, we want more people to see that. How competitive is, how fun these games are, how good these players are. And again, in the same way, like we're not going to compete at all with the NBA. I don't think CSG, that's none of our plans. But we sort of want to complement the NBA. Right? Whether you're a player, whether you're a coach, whether you're an executive, we want CSG to be a place where you can go get better and sort of jump the line, in the NBA. And that's sort of what we want to create there, as far as kind of people going from the U.S. over there to play or to work.
I think, Connor, with your experience as a former NFL player, how does that translate? You've obviously been in locker rooms, you've obviously been in big situations, but it's a different sport. How does that translate to your new role working with Trieste?
I don't know exactly what you mean by translate, but I think in my role with the Eagles, I work in development, right? So I work with all players, like on the field, getting better, but then there's stuff we sort of do off the field. And when I think about sort of developing at a very high level, in sort of basketball, I look at Trieste as this incredible opportunity, because there's a lot of, and I'm sure in basketball the same way. You're 22 to 26. There's a lot of guys that don't sort of make it in the NFL because they're still developing during that time. They just need a place to go for a couple of years. In the NFL, we don't have a built-in sort of developmental league. We have college football, and then you're in. And now we have bigger practice squads. That is really sort of my focus, helping these guys for a couple of years. But there's a lot of guys that just needed more time. For us at Trieste, I think this can be a place. You're 23 years old, but you're mentally going to be a lot different when you're 25, 26. And maybe you're ready then to go into the NBA. And I think Trieste can be that. Players are really interested in sort of having sort of a global mindset. I mean, we offer that. The game as a whole, especially basketball, is becoming more and more international. So I think teams, especially American teams, will appreciate somebody having sort of a global perspective, global scouting perspective. It's a place to go innovate and try things that maybe you don't have the luxury to do in the NBA if you're an executive or a coach. So I see it as a real sort of developmental space and opportunity, while also being a place that wins, for the fans there in Trieste and plays at a very high level.
I look at the imports, the American players that come in. Is it? I feel like as an American who would be, traveling overseas, it would be a breath of fresh air if I knew that part of our ownership were American, because the language barriers, the issues that you deal with, sometimes you feel very alone. You feel completely isolated. There's nothing really there, and the struggles that you have, you're dealing with them on your own. So having that American ownership, is that something that you think your imports are? Have they reached out to you? Have they come and talk to you in situations just because they feel more comfortable talking to an American than maybe someone of Italian, some Italian owner?
There's definitely some of that. When I was out there, I mean, all the American players just like flocked to me, just trying to talk to me about how did this happen? Where are you from? Asking me about my time in New York and growing up and playing sports. There's just going to be a natural connection there when you're American and you have players who are overseas who miss their families, right? Because a lot of their families are not able to travel as much to go see them play, and they're watching them, on the computer screen. So having that connection makes a huge difference for those players. But I think it makes a difference for all players. I mean, even the Italian players have, came to us and just really interested in what we offer in connection to sports in the US. And so I think across the board, just having that connection in the US, knowing that we're coming in from abroad, giving that the global perspective and opportunity to expand their personal brand and the team's brand, everyone wants that. Everybody wants that. Everybody wants to be, on TV or having a more global presence and having people know who they are and increase their followers and all of that. So like we offer that opportunity.
Yeah, I would just pick up on what Fitz says. I think it's all the players. I think, Kevin, we all know, like in basketball too, it's very much about, in all life, it's about relationships. I hope, our players understand, we have certain relationships in the U.S. That, can be helpful for them. But most of all, in my experience, kind of be on the other side as an athlete. And I played for some great teams, some great owners. But, I would say Jeffrey, I've learned from just being around Jeffrey Lurie. And the most important thing an owner can do is really care about the players and them being successful and finding ways to sort of set them up for success. And I think at CSG, that is solely our purpose. And we need to make sure like our players know we care about them, and want to, set up sort of the infrastructure around that team to help them develop and get better and get where they want to go. And I think, Kevin, you can maybe speak to this. I think previously, like sort of, Americans playing overseas, it's traditionally, maybe because of language or whatever, it's more transactional. There's wide open free agency, you're in and out. We want it to be a little bit more not as transactional, where they know we care about them. It's not a whole new roster every single year, but there's more long-term development happening.
It's funny you said that. I talked to a player who I played with in Estonia, and he's Estonian, and we talked about the how difficult it is for a domestic player, like an Italian player, to play when every few weeks there's a new American shuffling in and then shuffling out and then shuffling in and shuffling out. And it seems like a very frustrating experience for them, because they're trying to win. I mean, that's their home, and their legacy is going to be made by how well they do, how many championships. I mean, it's the same with us. Like if here we're sitting there having Michael Jordan and LeBron arguments all the time, and it's all comes down to championships. Like, oh, he wasn't a killer. So these guys are in the same boat. They're trying to enhance their legacy, and then they're sitting there dealing with all this nonsense of just people coming in and out and things not fitting. And that's it's a tough thing. And I always said guaranteed contracts and better recruiting would fix a lot of those things. So when I look at that, I look at it as like, wow, this is, speaking to you guys, is a breath of fresh air, because I think that's something that is so necessary overseas, where you have ownership that's like, listen, this is going to happen. Take your time. Let's develop and get this player better. Because I mean, you give 3 games, it's really tough to get a small sample. But there's been multiple times where, 3 games and some of my teammates have been gone. I'm like, what, where are you going? They're like, yeah, we're out. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. It's like such a short leash over there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no doubt.
that was
Go ahead, Fitz.
that was a good that was a good learning lesson for us. Like when we bought the team, we realized, a lot of these players on 1 year contracts or 1 season contracts, and we're like, but wait a minute, why is that the case? Like, why is that the norm in this league? Like there's so much development that can happen when you have a player for more than 1 season, right? Like that's the goal. And so I think you're right on in terms of how you think about development and guaranteed contracts. And those are the things that we're thinking about too as we try to develop this team and help elevate the entire league.
Kevin, let me ask you, what would be like your 2 pieces of advice? Like new ownership, none of us played overseas. What do you think are the two sort of most important things in the minds of players over there to be successful?
I think the biggest thing is when I was overseas, we talk about like the mental side and the support system that exists. It's a lot easier domestically to call your parents. I know when I was in college, my parents would come to 90% of my games because I went to Monmouth, which was an hour and 15-minute drive. And that support system was there. So if I was frustrated or pissed off, that support system was there. It was very, very, you felt it that you were so far away. Like you knew in your mind you were so far away and that everything was your support system, your friends, your family were all gone, and you felt like you had no one to really talk to. That was something that I said would be so beneficial if there was. I mean, that's what we're trying to do now, but like having something where people can talk to or talk out some of their issues, or even like the mental blocks that you can create, foul shots, things like that. It's real easy when I was in the G League and I'm like, shit, I'm missing my foul shots. And then you have like the top NBA shooting coach is like, here, let's do this. And you're just sitting there like, cool. But none of that is available overseas, and you're just left on your own. And you're left on your own too. Like you don't really have a ton of access to the gym. Like you go to the practice and then it's like, okay, well, there's I don't know, like another game going on in here. So you can't really, it was just, so I guess like the having people there in the organization to help these players through these tough times and understanding that these athletes are dealing with so much and they're putting their lives out there and they're traveling so far away and chasing their dream. And that kind of needs some support at times. And some people can handle it. Trust me, there's times I just had to handle it. But now I feel like athletes, I mean, shit, like the transfer port, I think athletes are less inclined to be able to handle situations like that these days. And I think that's important. And just having that support system there for them. And I think that would be a big thing. And like you're saying, the contracts, that was the toughest thing because I understand it's tough to scout a player when you're watching just film. Like you've never seen them live, and all of a sudden this person's like, here's your airline ticket, come over. And then you're like, oh shit, like he's not what I thought he was going to be. But how do you do that? Do you take the time and be like, okay, let's work on this? Because he's good and he showed he's good. Let's work on this. Or is it like win now? And that's what you guys were saying. It's like a very win now mentality because you only have a certain amount of games. It's not an 82 game season. So that win now mentality. So like having something where there's a guaranteed 1 year contract and it's not like shifting of players will help the team, will help the domestic players, and will help those imports establish themselves and not sit there with this burden of like, oh my God, I had 12 points, like I'm going to get released. And that's what I thought. I had 12 points one time and I was like, might as well just pack up my shit because I'm leaving. I didn't end up doing it, but I guess they gave me another shot and then I ended up being an all-star. And it's like, you never know. It's like, there's just different things that happen. So having that leniency, having that guarantee, and having that support for the players, that would be my biggest things. Sorry,
Yeah,
that was my 10 cents.
No, man, that's those are great points, and I think that's something we're talking a lot about at CSG right now. Is sort of the support, sort of all the way around, and just like thinking about how hard it is for some of these players to be alone, on the other side of the world. That's tough. That'd be tough for anybody, and then put in the pressure that sort of the fans and the coaches and everybody puts on them. Oh my gosh, we've got a special guest here. She just found her way up here.
Hi.
And then I would say, to your point, I think this is important to say, but when we did our due diligence, Trieste, and credit to all the staff there and the team and the owners, that no one, and we talked to players, I talked to agents, I talked to people around the NBA, there has never been a question about players not getting paid who have played for Trieste, which we thought was really important, to not be, purchasing a team that had sort of those credibility issues. And Trieste hasn't had that.
That's incredible. That is a huge thing. I never really experienced it to the point where other guys, everything was pretty stable where I was. Poland was a little weird. They just kind of released all the imports at one time and we're like, okay, I guess I'm leaving. But it's wild how some teams just, you make those accommodations and you make that investment, but you're not willing, you don't have the funds to actually pay for that. So that's kind of the Wild West. Now, before I wrap this up, you guys, the biggest question is, what would for both of you have both done a tremendous job of taking on the ownership of a sports team. What advice would you give to someone who's looking to invest? Because I spend a lot of my times in meetings helping with my clients who are overseas athletes, but I've been spending more time with people who are investing and looking to invest in overseas basketball. And they always ask for advice and, things that we just kind of talked about. Now, when you guys look at it, what's a piece of advice that you guys would give to anyone looking to pursue a career in sports management or ownership overseas?
You got to understand the fan base. You got to understand what they care about, why they're passionate about this team, understand the history of the team, because that goes a long way in terms of where you're going to bring the team, how you're going to bring the team forward, and how you're going to advance the team. Given that the fans are so sensitive about their teams because it really represents who they are and where they're from, even the smallest changes that you can make can have a huge impact in that region. So you got to really understand and go out there and visit and shake hands. I was talking to our cab drivers. I'm talking to, person serving me coffee. Tell me about this team. How long have you been in Trieste? You really got to be on the ground on some of this to really understand what you're about to get yourself into. And you also got to be a little, you got to be a little crazy to invest in, in sports overseas because it's so different, right? It's such a different thing. You got to be willing to accept the fact that there's going to be a lot of uncertainty. You're not going to know everything, but you're taking a chance, right? And you're taking a chance on a good group of people, good group of players that have a huge prospects for the future and believe in that and be steadfast in that, even during the down times. So it's hard, it's not an easy thing to do, but like we showed, it's possible.
Yeah, I would just add, they should do it. Keep learning as much as you can. I mean, for us, right? If somebody came to us, and this is just very simple advice, but if they wanted to come help at CSG or work at CSG, become an expert at something and come say, hey, we're an expert at this and we can help you at this. So learn everything you can about one part of the game or part of the league or part of a team, and then sort of bring that to a sort of ownership group and say, this is how you can add value. The other thing is, if you are investing, sort of at whatever level, I would say to Fitz's point is, sports is still, I like to say, sort of a business. You know what I mean? It's a business, that's for sure. You're in the entertainment business, but it's different too. It represents people's identity. It's really important to people. There's a lot. I mean, Kevin, you were a player. You know what that's about, being a player. And I just think you have to sort of be smart in how you think of it. It's not going to be transactional all the time. You need to have a long-term vision of, what you want to invest in, what kind of team you want to sort of support. And I think that's really important because if you go in it just totally transactional, think you're going to make money, in a 3-year horizon. Good luck. I hope you do, but good luck.
I think you guys hit a lot of people do the who, the what, the when, the where, the how even, but not many people focus on the why. And Fitz, that's exactly what I always look at. Why are you doing this? Why? What is your reasoning for doing this? Why are these people doing this? You're talking to the different smaller aspects of the club, but like, why are the fans the way they are? Why are they? And that's such a huge part of, when I look at investing, such a huge part. You have to focus in on that why, because that's the passion. And when you focus in on that passion, that's when it really comes together. And this is very interesting, because I love talking to athletes, but I even love more talking to people who are involved in other aspects of overseas sports. So this was really a pleasure for me. So I really appreciate you guys both hopping on today.
Thank you for having us. And if there's one message, I would just say, like, these things are possible, right? Like, if you're even thinking about ownership, if you're a former athlete, well, no matter where you're coming from, what your background is, I'm a lawyer, right? So, like, no matter what your background, these things are possible. You can do it. And, we were able to do it. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned through the process, but, it's not above your abilities. If you're listening and you're thinking about it, like, do it.
Connor, I will say that Aaron was on the podcast last week, so he got you by a week, but that's okay. We'll figure it out another way.
Hey, thanks for having us on, and appreciate everything you're doing for overseas basketball and for the players, and sort of telling their stories. I think it's really, really important, and we want to, we appreciate you having us on, and we want to support you, man.
Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for all joining us. This has been the Overseas Famous Podcast. I'm Kevin Owens. We'll see you guys next week.